black Anunnakis, but the ones that I know that are coming are the white ones, and like I told him, I said if they were black, I'd say so, but the ones that I know of that are coming are white. So I don't know why people always pull this into some kind of racial issue. It really gets on my nerves. And I more than once have gotten really rude to people in emails over this, simply because as far as I'm concerned, it's nothing to do with race. It's dealing with information that I have at the time. And so I just get really tired of that crowd. So if you've sent me an email and I've been rude, that's probably why. I just can't really, it just ticks me off to no end about this whole people bringing in race about everything all the time. But one of these things, back to Solomon, I always end up getting on these rabbit trails. Back to Solomon being the founder of Masonry. You know, for a while I didn't know what to believe either. I thought, well, you know, it says in all these ancient texts that Solomon was no longer worshiping the Lord and that he died in sin and he had stopped worshiping him. And, you know, at the time he had built the temple, the Lord's temple. He was the first king of Israel to build the temple. David had started collecting supplies of money, and then Solomon inherited that. He was also at the same time building little temples for his wives' gods, and so that's really where he did, towards his life, fall out of favor with the Lord's Holy Spirit. The Lord's Holy Spirit had left him because he had fallen into idolatry by doing that. But the thing that's interesting is Solomon had written many books in regards to all of the information that the Lord had given him in regards to the demons and how to conjure them up, how to call them up, what we would consider witchcraft today, about circles and triangles and the rituals needed and the alignments of the stars and the sun and constellations and all this weird stuff we would just consider witchcraft. It was just astronomical information back then that some things had to be in a certain alignment to call this one demon forward or whatever. And some of these ancient texts reverting to the fact that Solomon had used these demons to help build the temple, that he would call up these demons. There were 72 of them that he had command over, and he would put them to work in doing various things in regards to building the temple. I don't know if I believe that one or not, but the information, that's what it states. So chew the grass and spit out the hay. But before he died, one of the things that's been widely kept quiet or just abused is that he had all of the books he had written. And I don't know how many there were, but it says there were several books of magic, what they called magic, because in knowing how to call up all these demons and stuff. He had all of them gathered that he had written and buried with him because he didn't want anyone's hands getting on these books. And I know the Satanists, I think they refer to the one, the necromancy or whatever it's called. I was speaking with the dead. Necronomicon is the one pretty much based off of Solomon's one book on these demons and how to call them up and who they are and what their names are and stuff. What happened was that when the temple was ransacked, his grave was found, and they found these books inside Solomon's grave. And so these ancient Satanists, or whatever you want to call them, had taken these books, had them in their possession, and many years later, then you come out with Aleister Crowley and many other foremost Satanists who would rewrite their own material based on Solomon's information. And of course, they kept out the prayers to God and His Son that were attached to all of these different rituals, I don't know what you want to call them, ceremonies where you would call up these demons. Also had prayers and things associated with them. And of course the Satanists took all that part out and left everything else in, and acclimated all of that to their own style of worship. They're using the demons for their own evil purposes, and adding insult to injury, putting Solomon's name on all of it, so that people would think that all of the information was from Solomon, when it wasn't. They had stolen the information from Solomon's grave, from his tomb that he was buried in. And so pretty much knocks the floor out of Freemasonry, and they're based on Solomon. He had nothing to do with Freemasonry. He's not the founding father. They just attribute that to him because they stole his material and then they perverted it for their own use and what they use today. And many of them, even today in these secret lodges, all their rituals and all the information that they have was stolen, taken from these books that were stolen from Solomon. And so I just found that interesting. And they also attribute that Hiram Abiff, I believe he was the king of Lebanon at the time, who had given Solomon some assistants, some carpenters and craftsmen to build the temple, because the Israelites at that time were not craftsmen, they were farmers. The majority of them were just farmers. And so when he built the temple, he got a bunch of craftsmen from Lebanon and neighboring areas who came in and cut stone and did things to work on the temple and build the temple. And so the Freemasonries also took that whole thing from Hiram Abiff and made him a legend, like he was close buddies with Solomon and building this temple and knew secrets about it and stuff. And it's all just a mimic. It's a gimmick. It's a charade to make Solomon look like he was in an alliance with the nearby pagans, and then attributing all of these satanic groups and lodges to him. I mean, it's been 2,000-3,000 years now, and they've been attributing all of their stuff to Solomon all of these years. And Solomon was the most wisest man on earth in the ancient days, which is probably why they want to be attributed to him. But it doesn't work, because all of that information was stolen, and they chopped it in half and used it as they wanted to. And so that's pretty much gist of what the Lord was showing me about Solomon and the things that were happening back then. Very interesting study, because the Lord's always told me that if we want to know the end, then we need to know the beginning. And Solomon was just kind of a rabbit trail. I know, because you even have to dig further before even Solomon if you want to understand the end days. But that's a good understanding right there, a good study, point of study for a lot of people that want to study the basis of Freemasonry and the beginning of that whole thing. Because if you look at the pyramid worship going on today in the New World Order, the whole eye in the cap above the pyramid and the top of the pyramid not being hooked, like the back of the dollar bill and all that, believe it or not, none of that is ancient. All of that is an American creation. The Americans created that part of Freemasonry. It's not even part of the original ancient history of the Freemasons. They didn't even worship the pyramids back then. They had nothing to do with pyramids. And I see this eye thing all the time. And of course, today, in today's secret lodges and stuff, they worship this eye, this all-seeing eye in the sky. And from what I can tell, it's nothing but a satellite. It's a satellite in the sky, and it records everything that happens here on Earth. Because what's going to happen is when Jesus arrives, this fake Jesus, this Sananda, when he arrives, and it's going to be a September of some year, next year, the year after, God forbid this year, I know 2009 is very dominant. That could be either this September or next September. Hard telling what the timetables are in the Bible, because we're on two different timetables. We're on the Hebrew calendar, we're on our calendar, Gregorian calendar, and so it's pretty hard to nail it down to a specific month of any year for anything because of the time differences. September is a dominant month. I can't tell you which year. But when he arrives, he's going to have this show in the sky. He's going to display the actual time of Jesus' birth and death and various things about our history, because what they're going to do is point out all of our wrongs. And they're going to correct all of our wrongs with their animated version of history that, of course, they've corrected to fit their own views that they've edited. And I've been warning about this forever. It's even part of the Blue Beam project that NASA has planned for everybody to help pull this charade off, this big Hollywood production in Jerusalem. And so that's what this whole eye thing is about.